Today, we're going to be kicking off a mini series about the five love languages. And for those of you who don't know what the five love languages are, it's the concept best known thanks to Gary Chapman. He's the best-selling author of this love languages book, The Secret to Love That Lasts. And he talks about these five main love languages and how they can improve your relationship. This one specifically for your spouse. And the five love languages are quality time, acts of service, words of affirmation, physical touch, and gifts. Now, today we're going to be talking specifically about words of affirmation. Nichole and I noticed that a lot of our listeners were speaking about the difficulty of communication with their partners, and that being one of the biggest fights and struggles in their relationship. And we all know relationships are hard and they require a lot of communication, but they're much harder when you're not speaking the same language. And I'm not talking English, Spanish, anything like that. I'm talking the actual love languages because we tend to show our partner the love we want to receive. But if we perceive love in a different way than our partner, they might not notice we're showing them love at all. And that could be difficult when you think that you're loving your spouse well and they think that you're not because you're not speaking the same language.
That's a super good point. And if anybody is sitting here already wondering, what is my love language? Me and my partner always seem to be in an argument about X. You can find out, you can take the love language quiz at the fivelovelanguages.com. But the other thing I wanted to say, Caitlin, is it's a really good point and it's a really nice way to weave together some of the past episodes that we've had and some of the data that we've gotten from our listeners. And I guess I also just wanted to say, if you're uncoupled and you're listening to this, I think it's still super valuable because I think love languages is a little bit of a misnomer. And I think that love languages is just the way in which we communicate, not necessarily about loving feelings or in loving relationships, but just how we communicate in relationships, period, whether that's with our parents, our siblings, our coworkers, our friends. And so I think it's really valuable to know the ways in which you're maybe unaware of how you're communicating with these people in your life. And by taking the quiz and learning, putting a name to something, I think can help everybody.
Absolutely. And I think that's why it's important to understand each other's love languages. And it can be vital to building and maintaining a healthy relationship, not just with your partner, but with your friends and your family, your coworkers, whoever's important in your life. So, talking about words of affirmation, Nichole, words of affirmation, it's, you know, it's gestures or acts that communicate to your spouse that they're appreciated, supported, and loved. And it doesn't just have to be said out loud, it can be written. It's usually something hopefully kind and encouraging and positive and like gives you life and speaks life into you, especially if that is your top love language. Um, I think the other thing to point out here is that it costs absolutely nothing to offer your spouse or even your friends, your family, something kind and loving and supportive words. And even if words of affirmation isn't your top love language, and this is something that I've learned through reading the love language book a couple times in my life, is that typically people have a top one or two love languages, but everyone needs every love language to thrive in a relationship. Like I still need words of affirmation, even though it's not my top love language that I need to receive love. So
Yeah, and you said beforehand, like words of affirmation scored pretty low for me. And so when we were right before this, and I was like, oh, I don't like to be publicly recognized. I don't really like people to affirm me in that way. And you gave a really good example, which I think was really helpful, which is like, but if you cook a really good meal for somebody and you invite them over your house, you don't want them to look at you and go, wow, that was delicious. And it's like, yeah, I absolutely do. So I think that just speaks to like, it's not just about, oh, I love you. You look so beautiful. That's one way that you can express it, but it can also be like, wow, thank you so much for, cooking this delicious meal. It was so good. I'm so grateful. Like that is also words of affirmation. And that was really helpful for me to hear because I was like, oh wait, no, you're right. There are things I want to be affirmed about. It's not what I think as typical words of affirmation.
exactly, you are not a type of person that wants to hear the physical words of affirmation, like unless that's not true because when I tell you, oh girl, your hair looks fire, you're like, I know. Like, and so I think it's just getting recognized in a, you don't like to be recognized in a big arena of people, but like if it was just me and you or you and your spouse or whoever, you're fine with taking a compliment.
Yeah, no, I think that's super true. And I think like even that nuance is helpful to understand of like, oh no, one on one. Yeah, tell me how much you love me and how great I am. But like please don't say that in front of more than one person. And even that is really helpful, right?
Exactly, exactly. So, where did words of affirmation fall for you on the love language test?
Fourth out of five. So almost like the bottom pretty much.
Well, okay. So it was 3 out of 5 for both Mike and I. And actually, for Mike, it ranked it at 23%. So it was almost like a fourth of his love languages. And for me, it was only 17%. So I also realized thinking about this and talking about planning for this episode, he he likes when I compliment him or just notice or thank him for doing something. And for me, I guess I don't really need that as much. Do I want him to tell me I look beautiful? Yes. Does he tell me at the most inopportune time where I look like the scum of the earth? Yes. Like, and I just like, it's hard to believe him, and in moments like that. Um, but words of affirmation, I feel like it isn't a very hard love language for me to give, maybe because I was a teacher for so long and I had to, you have to compliment little kids all the time to encourage them to keep going and doing things. But I realize it's harder for me to give to Mike in the way that he might be wanting it. I'll just say, thanks for doing that. And yes, he likes that type of recognition, but I think I've got to dig a little bit deeper. So, what was Nick's top love language?
So words of affirmation was actually his number one, which I knew going into this because we've had this conversation and just that so resonated with me what you were saying of it's a struggle for me to feel authentic and give a genuinely well thought out like affirming statement, which I think is why Nick has told me like, oh, it'd be nice if you gave me more words of affirmation, but I'm like, I don't know what that means. And I don't, to me saying, oh, that you did a great job. That's not really, that's like that's surface. And so I think if you're
Mhm.
going to do it really well, it needs to be really thoughtful and specific and genuine. And I think for me, I don't know why it's just hard to get that like trifecta. And yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that's important to point out too is that you don't want to I I don't want people to think that by you practicing words of affirmation and trying to show your significant other words of affirmation that it comes off as awkward or feeling it's going to feel awkward, especially if you're not used to showing love in that way. But the more you do it and the more you commit to trying to show your spouse love in that language in their language, it'll start to become more of a habit and be easier for you to come up with better compliments or recognizing certain things that your significant other wants you to recognize. And a lot of times it's in complimenting on the specifics. It is showing them appreciation. It's showing them praise in front of other people and kind of giving them that toot toot, to make them feel good.
I know that you're right, and I think like I don't know why I have such a hard time. I feel like it's the typical like relationship argument, which is like, no, I do. I tell you you're great all the time, and then my husband is like, well, not really, and I'm like, do I really not? And then it's like, yeah, I don't. It, I think it just goes back probably to communication and like, well, paint me a picture of what that looks like. Yeah, it struggles.
I really think that this is so key though, because again, like more than 50% of people said that they struggle with communicating with their partner on previous episodes we've talked about, or what do they fight about the most, and it's literally communication. So it could be something as simple of and reading about what people fight about the most. Some of them are so stupid, like not closing the cabinet doors and like different things like. And I realized looking back at that episode is a lot of them are acts of service or the quality time or whatever they were seeking and they want from their significant other. It goes into the love languages. And so say your spouse is top love languages words of affirmation. There is so many things that you can do to show your significant other, your friend, your family, whoever, love in the realm of words of affirmation. Text messages throughout the day. Especially if you guys aren't in the same vicinity, and you can send a text and say, I'm thinking of you. I'm proud of you. I hope you're having a great day. Something like that. Text messages, face to face conversations, love notes for your spouse. You could write him a letter or a poem. I know that that is probably not your forte for you
Hmm.
specifically, but something. What about an email during the day? If your significant other is behind screens every day, you can send them an email saying, "Hey,
That's a
think."
great idea.
I know I've done
I
it to
actually
my.
love that. Really?
Yeah, I did it to Mike. We were working from home during COVID, and so we were together all the time. And so I would send him an email saying, "Hey, I love you. I hope you're having a good day." Something just to make him feel good. And the other thing is cards, like to express your love. Like it doesn't have to be on Christmas or a holiday or anything. It could be just because. And you write about maybe you were just going through a rough patch and you can say, things have been really hard lately, but I love you. We're going to get through this and I'm here for you, blah, blah, blah.
How do you think the fact that for you and Mike, this one scored right in the middle, how have you seen that play out?
Oh, that's a great question, actually. I feel like he's really pretty good at giving me words of affirmation, especially lately. He'll compliment me being a great mom to our son, and he'll tell me I look beautiful, like I said, when I look terrible and I'm in pajamas sitting on the couch and have spit up all over me. Like, it's very sweet. And again, I don't receive love. It's not my top one. It's the middle of the ground. Um, it doesn't mean I don't care about it still, but this has been something we've talked about in the past is for a long time Mike would always just tell me if we were going out to dinner and I actually tried and put myself together, he'd be like, "Oh, you look great." I was like, "Can you use a different adjective, please? Like beautiful, gorgeous, stunning. Give me another word," because almost every single time it was, "You look great, you look great." And so I think that again, if you are struggling to come up with something to your spouse, even ask them, "What kinds of things do you like to hear from me? What can I do to reassure you that I love you by using my words?" And so that you can ask them and see what they want to hear from you.
Yeah, the other thing that I was just thinking with your example of like it I love the dress you're wearing. That dress looks so nice on you, or your hair looks like, oh my God, what did you like? There's all like getting a little bit more specific than even just, oh, you look so beautiful tonight, or you look so stunning. It's like, well, what about me looks so beautiful or stunning?
Ding,
What is
ding,
it?
ding.
What
You
is
got
it?
it.
Um,
Exactly.
but the other thing that I was just thinking is the other thing I was thinking is like me and Nick are super playful, so we sort of rag on each other a lot, and we're like really we joke a lot and we kid around and we whatever. But it's also got me thinking that like if that's all you ever hear, I could see how if words of affirmation is your key language, like for my husband, that it might be like, oh, it might feel even more amplified if you're not hearing it because there's so much like kind of silliness that happens all of the time. It's like, oh, well, you could, make that joke, but you couldn't tell me, something nice. And it's so I think it is all about balance. And I guess I'm just thinking about like if you're going back to communication and the ways in which we communicate, like I could even see how too much of that could be perceived as like, oh, well, again, it just amplifies the thing that's not happening.
Exactly. So, some of the ways that you can show love to your significant other or your friends or whoever, if you need that words of affirmation, is write them a note and let them know how they make you feel, or telling them that, say I love you all the time. For me, it's been different because Mike works from home and now I'm home. So sometimes, like after we're done recording a podcast, as you can see, I'm in my husband's office here. We have sticky notes, and I'll leave him a sticky note on his computer saying, "I love you. I hope you have a great day." And I'll tell him something that I'm looking forward to doing with him, or us cooking dinner and spending time together, or just anything, and I leave it on his computer. When he used to go to work, I used to sneak out and go put it on his steering wheel so that he could have a note before going to work and know that I took the time to write him a note and leave it there, or put a note by his coffee if he was up before me. So there's like little things that you can do. Another great one, actually, while I was thinking of it, do you have an expo marker at your house?
I could get one.
get one. And it's super easy to write a note on your mirror because it comes off with a paper towel very easily, and write a little love note on the mirror and say, hey, you look hot today. I love you, whatever, and go about it. I left Mike notes on the mirror all the time too. Another thing that I try to do. Um,
I was just gonna say I like that you're planting some seeds, and going back to what you had said before about the emails, because that's like I send about 100 emails a day. It's like, what's one more? So I really
exactly.
like all of those suggestions.
Exactly. And I think the main thing too is to also make sure you praise them when they're doing something like at home or at work, or acknowledge them when they did something nice for you, because those
Mm-hmm.
are the types of affirmation that they need to know that they're doing something well, and they'll continue to do it because they heard you appreciate them on it. When I was working, I always appreciated when I would get a text in the middle of the day from Mike letting him know that he was thinking of me, or like saying, can't wait to see you later. Things like that made me feel loved, and it made me feel like he was thinking of me in the middle of the day while he was busy at work. It takes
Mm-hmm.
all of 30 seconds to shoot off a quick text with a kissy face emoji and some hearts, and it makes you feel good. Also, another one, encourage them to do something that they don't think they can do, and or when they're like doubting themselves. I don't know if this has ever happened with you.
Mm.
So Mike has been working on our garage and like doing a whole garage project, and reorganizing and doing things, and he just built us two beautiful shelves and hung a cabinet by himself. And he told me the other day, he's like, man, that cabinet's like super heavy. I don't know if I can do it by yourself. And I just was like, you can do it. Like, you've got this. Mainly because I want to park in the garage again, and your girl is trying to get herself back in there. But like, I came home and he had both the shelves and the cabinet hung, and I'm like, we're getting closer. But also, I was like, see, you could do it. Like, you just like you figured it out. And so I think he just needed that little like manly
I
boost of
could do it.
confidence. When I opened the garage, he was sitting in the garage on his little stool with his hands up, like showing it up like a Vanna White, and I was like, "You did it! Woohoo!" So, um,
That's cute.
yeah. The last thing I wanted to say too about this was definitely brag about your significant other, or even your friends or your sister or whoever, to friends or family in front of them if their love language is words of affirmation. Because if it's not, then yours is not, and you don't like that. But ask your spouse if you like to be recognized in public. Like, Mike likes to be recognized for certain things, and I know I do too, especially if I did something well, like you said, like cooked a great meal, or I made the plans and like everyone was having so much fun, like different things like that. I appreciate.
That also tied into something that came up, I think, in one of our last episodes, which was like ragging on your partner in public. And so I think it also just comes full circle to like, if you know that your partner's like highest love language is words of affirmation, be like really thoughtful about kind of what I was just saying, like the negativity that comes out of your mouth, right? It's like, especially if this is their primary love language, and if you're doing it in front of other people, it really should be positive. I mean, it really should always, well, maybe not always. It's okay to joke, but yeah.
For sure. So I did ask Instagram what's something that their partner says to them in words, what kind of words of affirmation makes them feel loved. And so some of the responses that we got, I wanted to share. Some of them we've already touched on, but complimenting their appearance, complimenting their body, hearing your significant other say, I'm proud of you, hearing your significant other saying that you're resilient, having your partner say that you're thankful for you, um, encouraging them when they're going through something difficult, leaving them notes to come home to because he leaves after me and I get home before him. So leaving a note to come home to and having that's really sweet. Um, Thank you for blank, blank, blank act of service. So like recognizing when your significant other does something for you. Telling your significant other you're a great mom or dad if you have kids. And someone said that the best thing that they love to hear from their significant other for words of affirmation is that I put the kids down already. That made me laugh as my husband was putting our son down as we are recording this.
Well, the other thing that this reminds me is something that you said in the beginning, which is everybody needs all of them to some degree, and also they're all a little bit interwoven. So it's like, thank you for putting the kids down. Well, you also did an act of service, which we're going to talk about in another episode. But these are really difficult to actually weed apart. They're so interwoven, and I also think if you like, for me, words of affirmation, like I said, is down at the bottom. But there are times where I'm like, oh, I kind of want to hear something nice. And I think that you can't underestimate any of them, that we do all need them. And if you don't ever hear anything nice coming your way, then it kind of creates like this drought. And then that might like bump up a little more in like what you are needing and seeking in the moment, in any
Exactly.
like given moment of your life, right?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head right there because that's exactly how I think and feel. Because sometimes, gifts is not my top love language, but sometimes do I want a gift from you when you go to the store and you don't come back with a Reese's for me? Yeah, I would love one, So I do think you're right. They are very interwoven, and I think it's important to love your spouse in all of the love languages, but definitely take time to focus on their top one or two love languages and continue to pour into them that way. Um, One other thing that I was thinking of that I realized I've done before and that Mike actually appreciated when we were planning our wedding, we were listening to a million songs trying to find a first dance song. And I sent him some songs and I sent him a link to the Spotify song or Apple Music, whatever I was using at the time. And I just said, something like, this song, no words needed. I love you. This made me think of you. And little things like that, that's words of affirmation through a song that you didn't have to sing, people. So it's a good example and something easy to just let your significant other know that you love them. So
That's another really good one. So let me just summarize some of the ideas you've given. So sending your person a song that makes you think of them. It's like a poem you didn't have to write. A poem, a love note, love notes, or just a nice note, which could look a whole bunch of ways. A post-it note somewhere in the house, a note on the mirror, a note to come home to, an email, a verbal affirmation. You look great. Thank you for doing X, Y, or Z. I feel like you said something else, but those were the gist. Did I miss anything?
if you did, I forgot it.
Yeah, you've given a lot of really good ones.
I think I think for me too is that, you know, you have to think about what your partner complains to you about. Like, are you not cuddling enough? Are you asking, like, well, how do I look? How do I look? What do you think of this? And you realize quickly what your spouse is wanting or needing from you when they're complaining about something, if that makes any sense at all. Another great way to kind of like dig a little deeper with this is just to straight up ask them to take this love language quiz to figure out what their love language is. And something I wanted to kind of like end on is the five love languages. They have an app. It's called Love Nudge, Nudge, Love Nudge. And so that's where I've downloaded it. I'm kind of messing around with it. And it was kind of cool because you are able to take the love language quiz right there in the app. It's a free app. And then you can send it to your partner and you and your partner can link on this app. So the cool thing about it then is that you are able to set goals for yourself and your significant other. It looks like you can go in and click and say certain things that you like to have done and you can set goals. Do you want it done daily? Do you want it done once a week, twice a week, three times a week, four times a week, monthly, two times a year, three times a year, or just yearly? Like there's a whole bunch of like quantities and times that you can set. And so for me, I'll just give an example. For words of affirmation, I said verbalize things you appreciate. So when I clicked on that, I set that goal and I said once a week. I don't need it every day, but once a week, verbalize something that you appreciate to me. So then your significant other can go in and say, on Monday, I said I did this. Check. So it's almost like I hate saying that it's like keeping score, but it kind of is. But it kind of reminds you to keep like to love your significant other in the way that they want to be loved. And then God forbid you ever have a fight, you do have some backup and be like, I just bought you flowers last week, type thing.
Well, and I think too, just to like flip that around a little bit, some people are data driven, right? And so if that's one of your, and I can be that way where I'm like, well, give me specifics, which is really frustrating if your partner is already feeling like you're not getting them to then like nail down some specifics. So if you are a data driven person, that could be helpful to like literally keep track for yourself, but also it's a kind of an accountability tool. It doesn't have to be necessarily like, tit for tat, but
Yeah.
it's a good accountability of like, we all play our stupid games and have just about everything to track on our phone. So it's just one more thing that you can be accountable to.
Yeah, I kind of like it too because on the app, it every single day you're able to kind of like do a check-in and it says how loved do you feel today? And so you can give a percentage of 50% loved, 90% loved, 100% loved. Um, and your significant other can see that. And I just think it's kind of cool because again, you can set the goals for what you want to do to show your spouse love and vice versa. So I'll keep messing with that and let you guys know more about how the app is going. But like I said, it's a free app. It's an easy way to take the love language quiz in the app. And then you can see what your partner's love language is and yours and have that. And mind you, if you've taken this quiz a long time ago, take it again. I highly encourage you to take it again because my husband's changed, and we'll talk about that more in the next episode.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I think too, they change. I think while your love language often is mostly steady, they do change a little bit. And I also think that depending on what you're getting versus what you need could also push them around a little bit. So I think, yeah, it's a really good thing to do. Get a baseline, take it, every now and then.
So we hope that this podcast gave you some ideas if your significant other's love language is words of affirmation, or hey, maybe your love language is words of affirmation. Send this to your partner and say, listen to this. These are some ideas of ways that you can love me better or, make me feel loved, and share it with them. Drop us some notes in the comments and tell us if you did any of these or if they've helped. And we'll see you next week for our next love language.
Stop what you're doing right now and listen up. If you're feeling this podcast, then here's a few things we need from you. Find and follow us on Instagram at Solicited the Podcast. Rate and review this episode. Feel free to share with us anything you've got about these topics that we talk about, and email us anything you want us to talk about and cover, or any feedback you might have at solicitedthepodcast@gmail.com. We'll see you guys next week.